Hello, horror addicts. I'm Kristin Battestella, aka Kbatz. Now, I don't know about where you are, but here it is cold and dark and bleak and dreary, which means it's the perfect time to talk about Edgar Allan Poe. Now, I know you probably read all your Edgar back in school. Maybe you haven't re-looked on him in a while, but there's always a good time to revisit some of your reading material. Now, you can find affordable little paperback copies that are different editions of the individuals, that are collected tales. This one is an old one that has a foreword by Vincent that is a lot of fun. Or you could get big, nice volumes of the complete works. And now a lot of things are probably free on your Kindle or your e-reader. When I was recently rereading here The Fall of the House of Usher, I found some new interesting things. Yes, this is one of the ones you probably read in school, and it was like, oh, the house, and the crack in the house, oh, creepy siblings, we get it, oh, symbolism, gee, thanks. But in rereading this one, I found a lot of actually homoerotic subtext that I didn't see previously. The 1960 movie with Vincent Price, produced by Roger Corman, adds, all kinds of love triangles and a suitor for Madeline, when in the story, actually, we have our unreliable narrator who's coming to see Roderick. And he talks about staying up with him all night and knowing him intimately and seeing these expressions on his face and only things that he would know and understand. We think, what was their relationship? We don't know. I think we often forget that Edgar Allan Poe introduced a lot of things into literature. We like to own him for horror, but a lot of staples like the unreliable narrator, a lot of things, the formats of the detective fiction, don't forget about the Edgar Awards, come out of Poe. I wish we had more of that Gothic Romanticism style kind of come back. My favorite is The Telltale Heart, which is again an unreliable narrator. Of course, it opens up with, oh, do you think I'm mad? Of course, what could possibly be wrong? No. And the pacing of the story is what I find is extra special. It begins as, although we have no doubt that he has some sort of mental issue, it's a very cold and calculated setup. I should have started talking about the black cat here because I have a visit from a cat. Poe had some feelings about cats, didn't he? Walling them up in walls, thank you very much. Away, thank you. Back to The Telltale Heart. It begins as a very deliberate pace, that it is very calculated and very orchestrated about him looking at this eye and peering in each night. And then there's a sudden act of violence and madness. And then there's a different pace that literally is built up with a sort of tick-tock of a guilt kind of complex. And it is a very suspenseful pace without having done really very little. So I love that one. It's quite a fun read. There have been a couple different movie editions. Some of them have actually been short adaptations, because that is some of the beauty about going back and reading Poe, is that they're all short works. But that means a lot of the film adaptations have to embellish kind of things. There's A Telltale Heart from the 50s that's a little longer format that has some romantic elements in it. And as we said, The House of Usher, the 1960 version with Vincent Price, they have to add a few things. This Vincent Price, Roger Corman produced the Poe cycle, they call them, films. They also take a lot of liberties at times. The Haunted Palace is really much more of a Lovecraftian kind of picture. And there's a great film that's loosely associated with that, called, in the US, it's called The Conqueror Worm, which they tack on a Poe title with a Poe quote to a film that's actually called Witchfinder General, which is a really, actually disturbingly excellent Vincent Price picture. Some people think Vincent Price tends to be over the top. I just think he is as melodramatic as he needs to be. He really relishes these roles, and that adds to the dementedness of them. When you're in the Pit and the Pendulum and you have people tied up like, Barbara Steele, you're going to be a little, off the wall. That's okay. The Pit and the Pendulum has some great dream sequences. And again, Barbara Steele is in that one. Hazel Court is in several of the films. There's one called An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe that is almost a one-man show of Vincent Price sort of performing several of these tales. He does some of the less familiar ones, like the Sphinx. And as we know, I'm bad with pronunciations, right, Kbatz? Readers will understand a lot of that comes from a lot of times when you're reading something you don't know how it's pronounced. So it's really great when you have Vincent Price sort of reading aloud and interacting and telling you about the Cask of Amontillado. Again, back to those cats and Poe having those obsessions with, putting cats in the walls, burying people alive, walling people up in the cellar, hey, it happens. Of course, Poe comes from a time of the Victorian era early Victorian era, where people were very into spiritualism and they were obsessed with death. I posted briefly, horroraddicts.net, there are actually some surviving letters between Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Dickens. We should really own A Christmas Carol and get back to some of those horror stories for the holiday season. So I don't want to spend all my time talking about Dickens when we're supposed to be talking about Poe. But Dickens, who, also had his flaws. When we see pictures of him, though, he does seem kind of like, I don't know, the happy kind of granddad or something. And although he did write about bleak and bitter things and a lot about social reform, his stories tend to be, I don't know, more life-affirming or more positive ending, perhaps, where we look at pictures of Poe and we read all of his material, and every single thing is kind of macabre and demented. So some of the things about being buried alive maybe were understandable, but then other things are just kind of weird, and that's okay. That's why we keep thinking about these things. The black cat is a great one. Now the cat walked away, of course. I talked about that one in the holiday gift guide in the Bela Lugosi collection. There's a great version with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Again, that strays from Poe, but they're fun nonetheless. The Raven, produced by Roger Corman, is also actually a comedy. Again, the style, they also did films called Tales of Terror and The Comedy of Terrors, where they're fun. It's Peter Lorre and Vincent Price and Boris Karloff all having kind of their magician and sorcerer kind of little battles. I think they're fun, but it's tough to find like a truly faithful Poe adaptation, perhaps. I don't know. There's certainly numerous editions to try. Dark Shadows actually did several different riffs on Poe as well. The Premature Burial actually is a piece that that's included in several of these double kind of sets. Actually, it doesn't star Vincent Price. That one has Ray Milland. Which, again, you see the elaborate orchestration that they go through, this obsession with death, which I guess when you're kind of bleak times and where people don't know a lot about science and medicine, maybe you think of death a lot, which is kind of creepy. My favorite film adaptation is The Mask of the Red Death. Tomb of Ligeia is also really great. That one adds, of course, a lot of Egyptian mysticism and reincarnation kind of themes. And it's filmed in the UK, actually, at several old abbey ruins. And there's several outdoor scenes. He has an affection against light. And you kind of realize that a lot of these pictures, are dark. They don't have, outdoor things. The Mask of the Red Death, I think, is very kind of bleak and dark. It has this, medieval end to it. Prince Prospero is inviting all the nobles to his castle. He thinks that they can all, have all their debauchery fun and ride out the latest plague that's going on outside with the peasants. But of course, it doesn't work out that way. So, you have a lot of pictures that you can always rewatch, always revisit those. And you have a lot of literature that you can always revisit. And if you're interested in some more material, horroraddicts.net just had one of our new submission calls go out for Dark Divinations. That's a new anthology that's going to be all about Victorian era supernatural and mysticisms. So if you write that, check that out. There's been some other Poe anthologies that have been released by some of our Horror Addicts staff. You can always check those out at our Facebook group or at horroraddicts.net. And don't forget, at the end of February, we're having our horroraddicts.net online writers conference. So that's going to be a forum-based, free-to-register, online for everybody. And you can come check out some workshops and chats and videos and interactive writing content, not just horror, all kinds of writing tips. So check that out. And join us at horroraddicts.net. You can read some of the things that I've talked about here on the blog as well. So you have a lot of reading material to catch up on, and so do I. Okay, bye.